Hey everybody, I'm Matthew Rory, head of community at Null Games. We are publishing Streetdog BMX from Us Games. And I'm joined here today by Adam Hunt, developer of Streetdog, Pumped BMX, all those games in that franchise. And we were going to get into a little talk, but thanks for having me, Adam.
You're very welcome, Matthew. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So you are from Oxford. You live in Oxford right now. Can you tell us anything about your upbringing? Did you grow up in Oxford? I also know that you lived overseas. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I was born in Oxford actually, and then kind of grew up here, started riding bikes here, all that kind of stuff, and then went to university in Sussex, which is near Brighton, down on the kind of south coast of England. Amazing BMX scene. Huh?
The only thing I know about Brighton is Tom Holland's from there.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know that. Good to know. Yeah, amazing BMX scene. So lived there for a few years, lived in London for a few years. Never thought I would come back to my hometown, to be honest. And then, yeah, we were living in London and I thought work wasn't going too well. My partner wasn't enjoying her job. So we decided to go and live on a tiny little island called Reunion Island, which is kind of in between Madagascar and Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. Yeah. It's in the middle of nowhere. I don't know why we thought it was a good idea, but we went to teach English and the theory was that we would become amazing surfers. But when we arrived, we realized it was these really, really, really shallow reef breaks, totally lethal. Yeah. So we gave up on that, did about 6 months there. And then we kind of, we started thinking about settling down and buying a house together and all that sort of stuff. And Oxford's a nice city. So I've ended up back in my hometown. Yeah,
awesome. Maybe I'll visit sometime. I've only ever been to London. That's the major place I've been to the UK. Maybe someday soon we'll do a tour, developer tour for Null.
Yes.
So obviously you've been making BMX games for like 10 years now. What brought you into the world of BMX? I mean, I've done a lot of biking in my life, some skateboarding, everything like that. But BMX seems like a very unique kind of thing. I'm curious what brought you to such a unique fandom.
Yeah, so I can remember the exact moment I thought, oh man, that looks really, really cool. And I was at school and one of my friends had a BMX magazine and just on the front cover was someone doing a jump off a roof into a grass bank next to it. And I just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Before that, I'd been skateboarding. I did some, what do they call it? Aggressive inlining, kind of rollerblading.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, did some of that. Did a brief bit of mountain biking as well, but none of them really stuck. It's kind of the story of my life. I kind of get into things passionately and then move on. And then BMX, BMX stuck. Yeah.
Cool. Right on. Well, so I am not super familiar with BMX culture. The one name that I always remember, and I think everybody in the world associates, especially in video games, I associate BMX with Dave Mirra. Rest in peace. Passed away a few years ago, I know. But he is almost like, I know skateboarders from Tony Hawk rosters, but Dave Mirra is so one-to-one with BMX to me. I was curious if you've ever had any encounters with him or if you've ever talked to any other like BMX celebrities or has that ever worked out for you?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, so I never met Dave Mirra, unfortunately. Who did I meet? Yeah, so actually, I'll tell you what, I think I met most of my kind of BMX idols on one trip. I went to Austin, Texas for a BMX event called Texas Toast, it was called. And I got there and I went to this guy's house called Joe Rich, and he has this ramp. It was called the T1 ramp, and he just had this incredible ramp in his back garden. It was like BMX Mecca. So I got there. This must have been around 2012. I was kind of vaguely trying to promote Pumped 2. And I went and kind of very sheepishly went up to him and said, hello. and yeah, he played the game and I had a really nice chat with him about it. He was talking about the positive impact on getting kids out riding and all that kind of stuff, which I thought was really cool. But then definitely the absolute highlight was when I was at Texas Toast. There's probably definitely on a par with Dave Mirra is a guy called Matt Hoffman. There was Matt Hoffman's
I do
Pro
recognize
BMX. Yeah. So I saw him just kind of walking across this field and I thought, oh man, I really can't miss this opportunity to go and say hello to him. But I'm not really the kind of guy who would normally go up to someone just, totally unannounced. But I thought, screw it, I'm going to give it a go. So I went up and I just kind of weirdly said, I'm the guy that made Pumped BMX. And I swear to God, he got his phone out. He didn't even say anything to me. He got his phone out and he showed me on his phone my 2 games. And he was like, man,
That's
I
amazing.
absolutely love you. Honestly, probably the highlight of my life.
Wow. I've in my time in press and everything like that, I've met like a lot of celebrities and people in gaming and movies and things like that. It is always, there are certain levels that I would not approach out of respect, but sometimes you just got to go for it. You know,
You just
take your shot. It sounded like it worked out for you, so that's good.
Yeah.
I actually, out of curiosity, you mentioned ramp. Do you have a preference for like park BMX or ramping or half piping or anything like that? I know most of the phrases from skateboarding, so sorry if that's not any accurate, but
yeah. So street has been the thing that I've done mostly riding. So you've got dirt, which is building jumps in a field or in the woods, and then you've got street riding, which is obviously just going out to the street, and then you've got park, which is more kind of custom built ramps. So I've always been more of a street rider, but yeah, as I've discussed previously, kind of building trails games was kind of easier in a weird way.
Yeah,
but street was always the thing that I wanted to do. These days, it's kind of mostly park, to be honest, because I'm old.
Yeah. Well, luckily you're finally getting around to making that street game. It's come along super well. We have a lot more to show of the game in the future, but I wanted to talk because I know you are a self-taught programmer. You've mentioned that before. You started programming because you wanted to make a BMX game, and I was talking with the producer of this the other day, and he mentioned he never really has got into self-taught programming because it involves screwing up so often that you're kind of your own worst enemy until you get proficient enough to become good at it. And it reminded us both of like, it must be the same sensation of getting good at BMX or any kind of sport where you are going to hurt yourself constantly before you become to a point where you're proficient. And I was curious if you've ever tied those two kind of things together. It feels almost like a lot of self-flagellation, and then you have a ultimate reward in the end. Do you ever compare BMX riding to programming?
I mean, I think self-flagellation, you've just nailed it. Absolutely. Yeah, I've never really thought about it that way, but I think you're absolutely right. They're kind of similar in a way. I've always said to people when I'm talking about making games and programming, and how, because people always talk about how starting a game is easy, but finishing a game is really hard, actually shipping. I think the fundamental skill is just being incredibly stubborn. And as you say, just failing over and over again and being like, well, I'm going to get it eventually. And that is the same as in riding. You might have a trick that you really, really want to do, and you'll be at that spot for hours, just trying it over and over and over again until you get it. And I think the other thing actually is kind of the creativity. Mm-hmm. Figuring out ways to do things and saying, so on the riding side, what if I hopped up there and then jumped over there? In the programming side, especially being self-taught, I wasn't using things that the kind of methodologies that people had taught me. I was just figuring out how to do things. Yeah. It
reminds me a lot of what you're saying is like especially in game development, they always say the last 10% takes 50% of your time. Like it's that last little bit. It also reminds me of music in a way. Like I used to do orchestra and trying to practice for a solo was always like at some point you have to put in many hours before eventually it clicks. And after that, it just kind of all falls into place. So a lot of different analogies that we're working with here, but ultimately it's all in the process of progress of making a good game. So I did want to talk about Pumped BMX as well, because you still have these handles on social media. Pumped BMX, that was your line of mostly mobile focused games. I know one of them is on Steam, but now you're making a game developed for Steam. I know we were talking about Switch as well. I was curious if you had any interesting challenges between that kind of dev cycle for doing something bigger and better. What has been like the most challenging thing coming from mobile to Steam?
Yeah, good question. I think the biggest thing is probably actually I'm being my own worst enemy again. I've gotten so used to being a mobile dev over the last 10 years that every decision is kind of passed through this, can I get away with it filter, especially around optimization and art and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So when I started making this and realized, okay, this is going to be PC first, definitely, I've really had to switch gears and start being okay with throwing more geometry at the scene and throwing decals in and more effects and this sort of stuff. So I'm so used to being, oh no, not too many draw calls, don't want too many polygons and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, kind of getting used to having a higher budget has been weirdly hard, I think.
Yeah. I always love the word budget in game development. People don't, if you're not familiar with how it's used, it's more often about like polygons and resources you can display on screen at any one time. It's not about money. I love the way that we use that word in game development. It's always like a fascinating usage of the word budget. But so Streetdog is coming out in 24. It looks like it's coming along super well. We're going to show off more of the game over the next few months, obviously. What between now and launch are you most looking forward to tackling in terms of what you're implementing in the game?
So I'm just about finishing off the levels at the moment, which has been kind of a weird experience because you feel like you're nearly done and then you ride around a bit more and then you think, oh, it would be cool if you added another section over here, or actually if you just added a ledge here, then you could grind off that and jump down here. So by playing the levels over and over and over again, I'm figuring out how to add more cool lines. So they've been the level designs have been all of them very, very iterative.
Cool.
But then once that's done, the thing that I'm going to spend huge amounts of time on over the next however long is setting all the challenges, making loads of really fun stuff to do in these levels. And that's awesome fun in and of itself, because I just I get to ride around the level and think, what would be a fun thing for me to do? And then I'll make that a challenge in the game. That's a challenge for other players to play. So they're kind of playing against me in a weird way.
That's awesome. And we'd be remiss not to mention your incredible QA team and testers. I've been on your Discord for a while now. They all have amazing feedback. So thank you to any of them who might be watching this. Thank you for contributing to Streetdog BMX. But yeah, so Streetdog is coming out sometime. We're thinking like late summer 24. We have a lot more to show about it. And right now, if you're watching this on the Null Games YouTube channel, you can find the premiere trailer. We did a stream the other day where it featured some Drew action and talking about Streetdog BMX a little bit more in depth. So look for those videos here on the Null Games YouTube channel. And we'll talk more about Streetdog in 2024. Thanks to Adam for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. Cheers.